Welcome to Oregon Voters Digest, the program that brings forward the social and political issues that are important to people living here in the Pacific Northwest. And now, your host, Bruce Broussard.
Welcome again to this segment of the Oregon Voters Digest. I'm Bruce Broussard, your host, and as you can see, I've got my paraphernalia on, I've got my Marine Corps cover on, and I'm still reaching out to vets, as you note, about getting their benefits. And I was in the Corps. But today, what we're going to be doing, we're going to be reaching out to some of those young vets, if you will, or young Marines, if you will. And I just happen to have one right here, sitting right here in the front of me. His name is Zane. You look at him. He knows what he's doing. Zane, how you doing? What do you want?
Say hi, Bruce.
You say hi. You going to say bye-bye?
You clap?
Okay. You clap.
Yay! You clap?
That's Zane.
Yay. Give him a big... Yay!
There we go.
Yeah, baby.
And you see that smile on that young man's face? I mean, gee whiz, and mom's right there, too. He's dirty, and you want to do that, do you? You want to do that? Okay, good. Well, this is, as you know, this is community television. Again, welcome aboard. And today we're going to be talking about a bill that's in the legislature right now in the state of Oregon, House Bill 3063. And our guest today we're going to be talking about. We're going to find out what it is and what's its intent, its impact on kids and families. But the bottom line is that the thing I was worried about, and that's why I entertained the idea of interviewing her this issue, is because a lot of times we're in the political arena right now, and we're putting kids up front. Right? Whether it be the immigration issue, that's a huge issue aspect of it. But kids is a major issue here during this particular time. We got a presidential
And on that
election.
note, I'm gonna.
then we've got, and then this is his mom. This is his mom, and he wants to get out of here. So we're gonna let mom go on and take care.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Jessica?
I've got you.
Thanks,
I can
Chris.
feel about it.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, good enough. All right then. Take care, good buddy.
Take care.
Bye,
Okay,
Zane.
good enough. Okay, good enough. All right. Well, as you can see, we're talking about the kids. We want to make sure it's just a bunch of grown-ups that are in opposition, if you will, to this particular bill. But we're going to find out about this. So the name of the game is that I've got Carissa Bonham.
Yes.
Carissa Bonham, and she's going to basically go through some questions, and she's going to just educate us about House Bill 3063, and she's a mom too.
I am a mom.
All right. How many kids do you have?
I have 2 kids.
She has 2 kids.
They're 8 and 4.
Two boys. Two boys.
There's a lot of energy in my house.
Oh, I imagine you do. Well, you have to have with a mom too.
Oh man,
Okay.
yes, true. No matter
good.
what gender your kids are, right?
So
That's
you're
a
more
lot
than
of energy.
qualified, if you will, to talk about this particular piece. Okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
And then also too, I am on the school board at our local school, and
Oh,
so
you are?
even
Okay.
though I'm not speaking on behalf of
Okay.
the school today. Thinking about issues like educational funding and
Yes.
access to
Yes.
educational
Yes.
services are things I think a lot about as a school board member.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I think I bring that kind of perspective to it as well, not just as a mom trying to protect her own
yeah.
kids,
Well,
which
you know,
I am, right?
Well, I know that at the legislature's they're looking at the possibility of trying to get more monies for the schools.
Absolutely.
But you read the big headline, the impact that it's going to have on PERS.
Right.
So they're saying, okay, might be looking at what, $4 million or something like that.
Oh, man.
Or was it $4 billion or something?
Oh,
it was a big
that's
money.
a number I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, it was, but the bottom was, I think it was $4 billion. But the bottom line is that $2 billion is going to have to go towards paying the
retired teachers.
the retired teachers, because you have to pay that rent.
Yes.
So we got to pay, because it's an employment type thing too.
Yes,
So that's
absolutely.
another major thing that we have to discuss in the schools.
Right.
But that's another day. I did PERS quite extensively about 8 years ago.
Okay.
But the bottom line is that thank you for serving, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for serving.
Oh, yeah,
Okay, good,
absolutely.
Good. So, hey, Chris, let's just get right up in this situation. Okay. The school board. Where are you from? What area?
Oh, in Hillsborough. Well, our school's in Hillsborough. I live in North Plains, which is basically North Hillsborough.
Okay.
It's just outside of Hillsborough.
Okay.
I can see Hillsborough from my house.
Okay.
I climbed up on my roof.
But that's the school board.
It's part of the Hillsborough School District.
Okay, cool.
Yep, and then I'm on the board for City View Charter School, which is in Hillsborough. It's
okay.
the only charter school in Hillsborough.
Okay.
So we operate under the blessing of the Hillsborough School District, but we have our own board that operates the school.
Yeah, you're right. It is part of the school district.
Yep, and so we serve Hillsborough School District kids. So that's who's attending our school. And then my function on the board is I am the chairwoman of the fundraising committee. Charter schools operate with about 85% of the funding as neighborhood public schools do, and so we have to make up the difference with fundraising. So this year we have to raise about $37,000 just to meet our budget and keep programs like PE and art through private fundraising for our school.
Wow. So you guys are pretty well, you're balanced now.
Yeah, we're balancing out, and we can raise $37,000, like right, like that's kind of like our limit, and so anything that affects funding that it's going to cause us to need to raise even more money, of course, is concerning to me as a board member, because I'm going to have to help lead our school to fill that gap so that we don't have to cut essential programs. Right.
Well, like I say, PERS is a major impact.
It is, yeah,
in the state of Oregon, that aspect of it.
Absolutely, that's a huge budget item for us. Every year when we do our budget, a lot of money goes to PERS.
Wow.
Yeah,
Sounds good. Okay, let's get this House Bill 3063.
Sure.
What is it?
Yeah. Okay. So what 3063 is it's going to remove from enrollment in school any student who is missing even one dose of any vaccine. That's what it does.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes, just one dose.
Even one dose. So if you, in a lot of families, they want to delay some vaccines. So hepatitis B, for example, is a sexually transmitted disease and that they by default give at birth. And some families go, let's wait until my kid's 10 or getting closer to the time when they might need a vaccine for a sexually transmitted disease. My newborn doesn't need this vaccine. If your kids are missing that vaccine, they won't be allowed to go to school. If they're missing any doses of anything, they won't be allowed to go to school. One dose of MMR is considered effective for about 93% of kids. And if you just wanted to do one MMR dose instead of two, your kids won't be allowed to go to school.
MMR, what do you mean?
MMR, so vaccinates for measles, mumps, and rubella.
Okay.
So that is one particular vaccine that you tend to get two doses of. So one dose is about 93% effective, and then the second dose brings the efficacy up to about 97%. So some families decide that they only want to do one dose, or they do one dose and maybe the kid had a funny reaction to it, so they don't want to go back for the second dose. Those kids are going to be excluded from school as well.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Wow. And that's if this bill passed.
Absolutely. Yes. So right now they're allowed to be in school.
Okay.
Yes, we're okay now. Everybody can go to school. If you want to opt out of vaccines in Oregon, right now there's two options. One is to go through the Oregon Health Authority to get a medical exemptions for a really short list of reasons. Basically, if you've had anaphylaxis, gone into a coma, died and were revived, developed a severe seizure disorder.
Okay.
Although they can say, well, your seizure disorder is not severe enough, so they won't give you an exemption, or an extreme allergy to certain ingredients for some vaccines. And that's it. That's all Oregon Health Authority will give you a medical exemption for. And then there's a lot of other medical conditions that doctors will say, your kids really shouldn't have this vaccine, or they should skip these particular vaccines. Those kids can't have medical exemptions, so they do the second type of exemption, which is called a religious or philosophical exemption. And to get that, your doctor either writes you a note saying, I discussed vaccines with this parent and they're opting out anyway, and that's okay. Or you watch an online video module and you print out a certificate.
Okay.
And so that's how anybody else does. So a lot of kids with medical reasons get that. Anybody who has a religious exemption for vaccines gets that kind of exemption as well. Or if you have a philosophical reason to avoid vaccines, that's also how you would opt your child out.
I'm sure there's going to probably be there's a lot of moms and how many kids are going to be impacted on this?
So it's more than 31.
Throughout the state, right?
Yeah, so it's throughout the state. In K-12 right now, it's more than 31,000 kids.
In K-12.
Yeah, who would be impacted. But the bill, it also impacts preschools and daycares and colleges, and so that's even more students that will end up being impacted as well.
So approximately, what do you think in terms of now? I mean, we got a lot of kids in school.
We do have a lot of kids in school. I'm going to stick with the more than 31,000 number just because I'm not sure on the precision of preschool and college. K-12, more than 31,000 K-12 students will be excluded from school. That's a lot of kids.
And I take it that you got a lot of moms involved in this thing too. I mean, you guys are lobbying throughout the state of Oregon.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So I've lived in Oregon for 12 years now, and I have been to Salem more in the last 3 weeks than I have in the entirety of the rest of the 12 years, because this issue is really important to me, and it's important to a lot of moms, so it's a similar story. a lot of families that, their kids have medical conditions and they're going to be removed from school for their medical conditions. I've met a lot of moms who have sincere religious beliefs that mean they either abstain from all vaccines or they abstain from the 3 that are cultivated in aborted fetal tissue because they have strong pro-life beliefs. Those kids will be excluded from school, even from private school. So if there is a church that has a strong pro-life stance and so people in that church aren't choosing the vaccines that were cultivated in aborted fetal tissue, their students won't be allowed to come unless they get those vaccines anyway. So that really creates an awkward position for private schools from a religious perspective, and those schools have the potential of really being shut down because of the bill.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, yes, that's pretty heavy. Now tell me this, in regards to, as far as the pro folks that are on this line, who's leading the charge on this end?
I mean, it's really the Democrats right now, the House Democrats, and Governor Kate Brown has said that she is really in favor of this bill, passing it. And I watched a media interview with her, and she was talking about one of her staffers who had a kid who was going through cancer treatment, and they couldn't be around people for like 4 years because their immune system was so compromised. So I think that's really the driving force for Governor Brown. And my heart really does go out to these kids, but my question is, if we're excluding more than 31,000 kids from school who aren't contagious for anything, for what means, how many of these cancer kids' lives will be saved by this? And I think the answer is really 0, because these students who have really compromised immune systems, they're not just threatened by vaccine preventable diseases. They're at threat if somebody has a cold or the flu. The flu vaccine is only about 25% effective. People who get the flu vaccine still get the flu, and these immune compromised kids can't be around them. So even by removing the unvaccinated kids from school, these kids are still at risk at school. They really haven't become safer by removing, more than 31,000 of their classmates from school.
What about the medication commercial community? I mean, they got a major lobby.
Oh, I'm sure, absolutely.
And, are they for this?
Oh, I'm sure they are, absolutely. And if you look at the corporate sponsors, people who support this, it's hospitals, healthcare systems, doctors' offices, who all really stand to profit from increased uptake of vaccines. And of course, if you were the manufacturer of any of these drugs, saying that, of course, we should make my drug mandatory, absolutely. I think that they're absolutely in favor of that. They wouldn't have any reason to oppose it. I might add, I reach out to vets to get a medical program. Yeah.
And the bottom line is that one of the major issues we're having right now is that we're trying to get people off these med aids, medical stuff, the medical pills.
Yeah.
And opioid. Was it opioids? Yeah, I think it was opioids. And that's a major issue now. And we're trying to figure out how to cut down this down piece.
Yeah. A lot of vets are actually involved in this movement too. We had a chiropractor who himself was a Marine Corps vet, and he has Gulf War syndrome. We've had other people involved who are former government employees. One worked for the CIA, and she had a bad reaction to the vaccine she got in preparation to go to Iraq. So through that process, a lot of these veterans, our vets are often the most vaccinated population.
Yes, very much so.
And because of that, they're also at an increased risk of adverse reactions to their vaccines. So, one of their children might be predisposed to a bad reaction as well, but you would never know it, except that mom happened to be in the Army, and so she got a lot more vaccines than their neighbor did, and through that process ended up, triggering a bad response, and they go, oh, maybe our family has a genetic predisposition to reacting badly. And those kids should be protected. Right now, if this law passes, those kids aren't going to be protected.
Wow.
They're going to be forced to either get vaccinated or be excluded from school.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So where do we go from here?
Yeah, so what I think we really need to do is educate families, right? A lot of people are unaware of this issue. Even kids who have medical reasons they can't be vaccinated, the religious community. I've had a lot of really great discussions lately with school district board members, and they just weren't aware. It wasn't on their radar. So I think it's really important that we're reaching out to our legislators, and honestly, they've been overwhelmed by this issue. We broke the email testimony submission system when it went through its initial testimony because thousands of people submitted testimonies, and that's much more than normal. So I would say if you're passionate about this and you want to, help protect kids and keep Oregon kids in school, I would drive down to Salem, make in-person meetings with your representatives, representatives, go to town hall meetings, reach out via email, make phone calls. These are all the things we need to do to help protect kids, keep Oregon kids in school.
Oh, very much so. Very much so.
Absolutely. So removing 31,000 kids from school isn't going to help Oregon's falling graduation rate. This has been a big initiative from the Department of Education. Their statement that they make about it is communities need to find out what is keeping kids out of school so that we can remove those barriers, keep kids in school, and help them graduate. But passing a bill that will automatically kick more than 31,000 kids out of school isn't going to help those kids graduate.
K-12.
That's K-12, that's not going to help those kids graduate from high school. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then the addiction issue is another issue within this particular situation, as far as addicted to, i.e., the chemicals, if you will, in pills.
Yeah, so it's interesting talking to some of the Republican lawmakers. The way that they interpret this bill is that they were calling it the Forcible Injections Act, because then it's not just dealing with vaccines. That the state really could, if this law is passed, mandate any injectable medication. So if you have a behavior disorder or any kind of illness that could be treated with injectable medicine, passing this law sets us up to say, well, you have this condition, you must receive this injectable medication, regardless of side effects. The state knows what's good for you. Do what the state says. And it's really a slippery slope from there, as far as adding any kind of injectable medicine to the requirements to be in school. And that's really concerning, because we should have autonomy over our own bodies and choose what gets injected into it.
Well, in all due respect, the public, they're very much aware. Besides being aware, they have some, there are issues, if you will, with the electorate at this point.
Oh, sure.
During a particular time. We don't trust them.
Right. Well, I don't blame them, because, when this bill first had its first hearing in the Healthcare Committee, 1,000 Oregonians showed up for this hearing. That doesn't happen with almost anything. Nobody has ever had 1,000 people. These moms and dads, professionals, doctors, chiropractors, nutritionists. There was overwhelming opposition to this bill. When you looked at who signed in to testify, you have a chance to speak in the hearing. A handful of people who work for hospitals, for healthcare systems, pharmaceutical companies, they signed up to testify in favor of the bill, and more than 250 Oregonians signed up to oppose it. And they didn't even get halfway down the list before they had to cancel the 3-hour hearing, and they said, thanks for coming, email us. And then more than 2,000 emails came into the system. Oregonians turned out big for this. And even though Oregonians turned out big, they had a lot of great facts and information. By the time they got to the work session and they voted for it, across the board, every Democratic House rep who was on this committee voted it through, despite the fact that, the doctor from OHA said that kids with medical conditions, unless it's on our short list, they're not allowed to go to school. Despite the fact, too, IEP students with an individual education plan, because they need special needs services, they won't be exempted from this bill. If you are an IEP kid, you're missing even one dose of a vaccine, you're supposed to have a federally protected education status. They can't discriminate against you. But if this bill passes, Oregon wants to kick those kids out of school. And sitting in the hearing, my mouth dropped open hearing them say that IEP kids are not entitled to an education in Oregon. If they don't meet the qualifications for enrollment with the vaccines, we can kick them out and we don't have to serve them anymore. And I'm like, this is going to sink the bill, surely. And then when Dr. Cieslak from the OHA also said that under no circumstances will people who have a family medical history that makes them want to avoid vaccines, or a genetic condition that wants to avoid vaccines, in Oregon, those things don't count. And that blew my mind. I thought, surely this will sink this bill. And the legislators voted to move it forward anyway, against the health, really, of Oregonians and the rights of Oregonians. Religious communities shouldn't be excluded from school. We embrace all, except for now that this law is going to pass, it's really going to segregate people based on their religion or medical condition. And that's a problem. That's not who Oregon is. Our citizens aren't that way, and our legislature is acting in a way that's not accurately reflecting the views of our citizens.
I was just thinking that, as you know, here in the Portland metropolitan area, we got Vancouver just right across the way.
Oh, sure.
And then there's this big piece out there right now that talks about the fact that we've got an epidemic in this area of the measles.
Sure.
I don't know how the counter aspect of it.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that from the standpoint of saying, ordinarily, when we were coming up and whatever, the idea is you're taking these shots, if you will, to prevent the disease aspect of it. So what do we have as an alternative on your end?
Well, so measles is a really contagious disease. That's true. Right. And in Vancouver, a lot of people have measles right now. Right. But really, that issue is a Washingtonian issue.
Yeah,
in Oregon, we've had less than 10 cases of measles. On average, we have about 10 cases a year. And they talk a lot about herd immunity and that if a certain number of the population is vaccinated, for the most part, the whole population is protected, which is why someone with an active measles infection attended a Blazers game that had 19,000 people in attendance, and nobody caught the measles. This isn't... kids in school aren't catching measles. Yeah. They're not catching measles and giving it to their classmates. So it was interesting. I was at a town hall meeting yesterday, and I got to stand up and speak and started talking about it. And he's like, oh, well, people are calling me and saying I need to do something about this measles issue. And I was like, can I talk about that? Because the measles issue isn't really an issue. The laws that we have now are already working, which is why it hasn't spread like wildfire in Washington. And honestly, if this bill were about measles, that we would be making it only about the MMR vaccine, which is what prevents measles. We don't need to tell kids if you don't have the tetanus vaccine, you can't come to school. Tetanus isn't transmissible between humans. You get it by stepping on a contaminated piece of metal. So that we're going to kick kids out of school for that, that's not about measles. And measles comes into the United States via international travelers. The current case came in via international travel. The big Disneyland outbreak people like to talk about came in from international travel. And I think if lawmakers were serious about preventing measles, we would start targeting international travelers and making everybody take their temperature at the airport and not let people in who have fevers. We don't need to target school kids because school kids aren't sharing measles with each other.
Okay, good. Well, look, this looks pretty good. Now, it's my understanding you've got some other individuals that might be coming on and sharing their feelings about this particular bill.
Yes, I think you have another show coming up that'll be longer that'll discuss this as well. Okay.
You're quite a spokesperson on this deal. It's a very interesting piece because we just recently been in the Portland metropolitan area. I was partial of that deal. It was the whole issue of lead in the water.
Oh, absolutely.
And moms were there.
Absolutely, yeah.
We sort of turned that around a bit. They're still a little slow, but that still is an issue statewide.
It is an issue, so it's interesting. I'm actually one of my best friends was an advocate for that too. Tamara Rubin, who was the founder of Lead Safe America and who runs a website just about lead awareness called Lead Safe Mama, and she was really one of the ones who blew the whistle on this lead and water issue, and the superintendent for Portland Public Schools stepped down over it. Yes. They pushed through this huge bond measure saying, we have to fix the lead in our schools, and they haven't actually done it. So the citizens were like, we have to fix it. So they pushed through this bond measure with the vote, and then now the pressure's off because they passed the bond measure, and they still haven't completed all the work.
They haven't. And the poor kids are they're always at the bottom of the list.
Right, yes. Well, so here's the thing. Lead affects you more adversely the younger you are because your brain's developing more. So when they decided how they're going to attack the lead in Portland issue, they started working on the high schools first, which doesn't make any sense because high schoolers aren't touching lead painted windows and putting their fingers in their mouths. They aren't as susceptible to lead poisoning as our youngest students. We should have started with the kindergartens and the preschools and then moved up, and they haven't done that. So we still have susceptible kindergartners who are being exposed to lead on a daily basis in their school building, and that's really wrong.
Well, in all due respect, that it's the priority aspect of it. See,
that's right.
Like you said, until that bond measure, there was no effort, if you will, to make sure that we solve that problem.
Right.
The monies went into brick and mortar.
Right. Yes.
And then talk about the water piece. They could have put some pipes in there and
absolutely
make sure that they good water.
Could have done that first, and they're over budget, and they haven't even gotten to it yet.
Well, now they're pushing the immigration piece.
Oh man.
See, that's what we're doing here in the Portland metropolitan area, and I can go. That's another subject matter.
Yeah, for sure.
You understand where I'm kind of coming from.
Yeah.
Okay? So what we'll do is that we'll sort of expect you to maybe get together with Jessica, I guess.
Sure.
And we'll get together and talk about our next show.
Yeah. I'd love to come back and talk more.
This, and I would encourage you this will be on YouTube, by the way. You look the address and whatever.
Awesome.
I would encourage you to blast this out.
Absolutely.
On social media.
I for sure will. And I'll let Tamara know we talked about lead too. She'll love that.
Very, very much so. Yes. Maybe she can come on back on. So, so I'll expect you to get together with Jessica.
Sure.
And we'll set up a show.
Perfect.
And when's the vote on this piece? When does it go?
So it's interesting. The way that a bill processes through, first it went through the Healthcare Committee, it's passed. Right. It's in the Joint Ways and Means Committee.
Okay.
They can can hold on to it until as late as June before it has to pass, and then it would go to a House floor vote and a Senate floor vote. This is not something that Oregonians are going to get to vote on. So if you care about it, you have to call your House rep and your senator because they're the ones who's going to vote on your behalf. And the governor, man.
Yeah, make sure you
blow
call
her
the
phone
governor.
up too.
Make sure you call the governor. And by the way, if the governor want to come up here and sit right next to
that would be fun.
Carissa,
Can we have
wouldn't
Governor
it be neat?
Brown
Have
come
her
talk
right
to me
here,
about it?
and then I can talk to both of you guys about that whole piece, right?
Man, I'd do that.
Would you do that?
Oh, I for sure would.
Governor, did you hear that? Governor Brown. I mean, she lives here. She lives here within this area.
Let's give her a call.
So we'll do that, okay?
That sounds great.
Good job.
Thank you so much.
Good.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
We appreciate that. For the kids.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Every Oregon kid deserves an education. They need to stay in school.
All right, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back with our next guest. See, rather than that 3 minutes in the front of City Hall, you need more time to that. See?
Oh, absolutely.
You need more than 3 minutes, huh?
No, it's ridiculous to expect anybody with an opinion. Go.
Oh, go. Here I go. I'm again, gee whiz, I get so excited sometimes when I do these shows. You know
Absolutely.
Sometimes I feel it. But I got this exciting young man right here with me right now today. And guess what? His name is Micah Fitch. Michael Fitch and
Micah Fletcher.
Micah Fletcher. Why did I get Fletcher? I was thinking about Steve, another guy that's supposed to be here today.
Okay.
He didn't show another Marine. See?
Oh, really?
Oh, you look good, by the way.
Thank you very much, sir.
Oh, yes, you look
Appreciate
good.
that a lot.
Okay, Fletcher. Okay. What we're going to do today is that it's sort of a continuation on my interviewing some of the young people that are here in the Portland metropolitan area that IEs have been sort of, I'd say, tarnished in many ways, because as far as I'm concerned, they've got something to say.
Tarnished how so?
Tarnished from the standpoint that, from the standpoint of the negatives. The protesting and the terrorists and the white supremacists, and they just go on and on and on, and really not get to the issue.
Yeah.
Not really get down to the issue of saying, okay, fine, what's on your mind? Well, why are we here? And then naturally, in all due respect, the folks who are the elders in many ways are affected in one way or the other. You know, they still moms and dads and
Right.
uncles and this, that, and
Right.
the other. But a lot of times they're depending on relying on the leadership, if you will, within our environment, if you will, to take care of the issue. And I for one, I've been around for quite some time. I've run for office and whatever. And it's like anything else, you know, we're all creatures of our exposure.
Absolutely.
You see what I'm saying? And a lot of times under the political process for running for office, if you don't have the money,
You're not
sometimes
gonna get in.
you're not going to get in.
It's
A lot of
just not
times
gonna happen.
you cut out the leadership aspect of it.
It becomes difficult from a standpoint of then you have leaders that don't know how to lead, they just know how to make money.
You got it. And so my thing is that, well, okay, fine. I've seen this situation, and so what I've done is that I thought maybe why not just go on and interview some of the key individuals that are out there,
Okay.
and then so they can just just express whatever's on their mind, if you will, and then we go from there. And I did this with Joey Gibson, the Patriot Prayer, and I knew him some time ago, if you will.
Okay.
So but I gave him the opportunity to
Right,
respond to the fact that he was known. It was said by several of the commissioners and the mayor
Okay.
that he was a white supremacist and all that other stuff. Or KKK.
That isn't.
That's not Joey.
That's just not.
And that's not him. And so anyway, but I had him on.
Well, it's not even factually accurate. No, and see, this is what upsets me about it, right? Because anybody who's lived in Portland for anything longer than 10 years,
Yeah.
well, no, at this point it'd be 19, so 20, anything more than 20 years, right? Is going to be somebody that remembers back in the day when you had actual neo-Nazis, bald-headed, swastika tattooed right here, running down the street and just committing crime left and right? When you're sitting there and pointing at somebody such as Joseph Gibson and you're saying, this man is a white supremacist.
Yeah, right.
The difficulty with that is that you are setting up a false pretense that these kids are going to look for now, so that by the time, not by the time because that makes it inevitable, but if there were to ever actually be a real resurgence of those kinds of people in this community, they wouldn't recognize it or see it coming.
Right, exactly.
And it's very different, right? Joey Gibson is going to come to your town, he's going to start some little rally, and a bunch of hoo-ha is going to exist, and there you go. That's what's going to happen. An actual white supremacist is just going to kick down your door and beat you over the head with a nail-filled baseball bat.
Right.
And that's well documented.
Right,
we don't even need to talk about it.
Right.
Like-
So that's that rationale. And then there was a young lady that there was an event here in the Northeast Portland corridor, where they at a church that they were talking about this issue. Where Joy was communicating with one of the police officers, Portland police officers, and basically, and it made a lot of sense to me from the standpoint of saying, okay, he was the police officer was his background was reaching out to Joy and said, okay, fine, you're planning on coming downtown, do you have a permit, that kind of stuff,
Okay.
and what are you planning, what time are you going to be here, that type of stuff, so we can call it, because that was the other side, and then naturally we got two elements that they tend to identify,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
Antifa and then i.e. the Patriot Prayer piece,
Right.
and then Joy is identified as the white supremacist side, and the good guys are Antifa, from the city standpoint.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Right,
And a lot of people
absolutely.
don't understand what that is.
But there's a nuance to
Yeah,
it.
that's what I'm saying.
They're not understanding that. So what you're talking about is two different groups of people that
Right.
come from various different backgrounds who have a diametrically opposite position when it comes to what they think is culturally correct. Okay. So when you're talking about Joey Gibson, you're talking, and this is just my interpretation.
Sure,
I've been wrong
sure.
before. I'll be wrong again. When you're talking about Joey Gibson, though, you're talking about somebody that comes from a libertarian perspective, with a heavily, I wouldn't say heavily, but with more of a nationalist orientation. Not nationalist like ethno-nationalist, which would revolve around race, but nationalist is in United States of America, right? And so, given that those are his tendencies, what he wants to see is things happening that are good specifically for his people and his community that he grew up with.
Yeah.
He wants, and then you go to the libertarian side, he wants there to be more freedom, less regulation in the markets, and he wants to see breakups when it comes down to large businesses so that there is more competition in the free market category. Now, you switch over to the other side.
Yeah.
So these are people who, if I could give what I believe to be a fair and proper analysis, are people that are extremely critical towards not only the history but the structural organization of the country that we live in. Which, to be quite frank, given some of the things that we have done, not only on a national scale but on a local scale, I can't really blame them for.
Okay.
And they end up having a number of different dynamic and more what would be considered non-mainstream tendencies from a leftist perspective. So you have your anarchists, you have your communists,
On
you
the
have
table. Don't hit on the table.
But don't hit on the
Okay,
table.
no
I'm sorry.
problem.
No, I
Go-
get
no
it.
problem. Go
So you have your anarchists, you have your communists, you have your socialists, you have your democratic socialists, you have your libertarian socialists, you have all this different minutia of left-wing politics that is essentially supposed to be counteracting what this group of individuals has analyzed to be the more cancerous and less positive parts of the United States government and its function in this country. And so the problem with that is that naturally the only way that these people got here and Joey got there and his friends of course got there is that they come from vastly different cultures. They grew up with vastly different experiences.
Right, exactly. Oh, yeah.
And therefore when you end up having somebody like Joseph bringing his rallies into Portland, you end up with all of these people were kind of born and raised here. And it's not to say that nobody that on Joseph's side isn't from Portland. Like plenty of them live here. I'm not sure how many of them were really born here, but plenty of them live here. You have all of these people from the Patriot Prayer side that are coming into town. All of these people, where I would say a majority of them are born and raised here. Seeing this guy coming from, as far as they're concerned, out of state into here to do something that they see as wrong. They just disagree with him diametrically. And they have a genuine fear that this guy is being used as a Trojan horse, right? So to call Joey Gibson as a neo-Nazi would be absolutely incorrect.
Right.
However, to say that in the early days of his rallies, neo-Nazis were not in attendance. I shouldn't even say neo-Nazis. I should say white nationalists were not in attendance. Would also be incorrect. Like, back in the day, when he first started doing his thing, there were a lot of people coming from out of state, coming from up in different areas. They were trying to push that sort of an agenda. But slowly what they realized is, well, Joey's Japanese.
Yeah.
That's not.
That was interesting. Yeah,
right. Like, A, Joey's Japanese.
And
B,
that's-
he has
that's
no.
fact, and that's fact.
That's fact.
Yeah,
this
yeah,
isn't something we need to debate or discuss. That's just the truth.
right.
When it comes to. Yeah. So essentially. Sorry. Too wordy. Put it a shorter way. It's a lot of people with a lot of opinions that don't like each other.
Yeah.
And some of them aren't from here and some of them are. And it's just creating problems left and right.
Oh yeah. No, I get it. Now, the other thing I was going to share with you is that the other thing is I know that it wasn't Joy, but it was Patrick that shared with me the fact that Christensen, we sort of knew Christensen too, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Jeremy, and I still remember Jeremy. Actually, everybody remembers the fact that Jeremy was on the bus, if
The
you will.
train at the time.
The TriMet aspect of it,
Yeah,
and that incident happened. Huge aspect of it.
Right.
And I don't know how you were associated with that, or but you got stabbed in the neck or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. That wasn't on the bus.
No, that was on a train.
That was on
so
the
that
train.
was on a Green Line commuter train heading eastbound.
Okay.
To be more specific, because I'm not sure, I'm very bad at understanding directionality when it comes to like north, south, east, west.
Okay.
It was a Clackamas. It was a Green Line train to Clackamas because I was heading to work.
Okay.
And in the end, he started.
With Jeremy.
Yeah, Jeremy started ranting on the train at just about everybody, and for lack of a better term, I noticed that at certain portions of his ranting, he was actually starting to target two very specific people. One of them was wearing hijab. Both of them appeared to be dark-skinned. And as far as I could see at the time, they were both minors. Now, I don't know about you, but my mama taught me that you don't let grown men harass young girls.
Right,
You just
right,
don't
right.
do that,
Okay,
period.
right.
So that is when I, believing for some reason that I had a decent understanding of the situation, ended up standing up and putting my body between him and the girls. And there should have been a solid, I would guess, 6 feet distance between me and Jeremy. And there was actually a gentleman standing next to me, Sean, who is an ex-Marine, and who also ended up speaking to Jeremy. But we were essentially telling him, in much more crass language than Sean, but like, dude, you need to stop harassing these people and just leave. Like,
And
if
you
you're
were
gonna act
communicating with him, right?
Yeah.
He knew you.
Knew me
somewhat?
would not be the correct terminology
Yeah,
for
okay,
it.
okay.
I have seen him before.
You've seen him before,
I'm
of
not
course.
sure he.
He recognized you. And
Yeah, and at the time when I was on the train, I didn't recognize that I had seen him before either.
Right,
like I had
right,
no
right.
idea that I'd ever been in this man's general vicinity. All I knew was that here was this guy. He was acting irrational, and it seemed potentially dangerous. And I, for some reason, thought that I was going to be helpful by in any way getting involved in the situation.
Right, I got you. That's how basically that happened.
Yeah.
And then naturally, he pulled out. Well, what happened to him afterwards? When he cut you, right?
Right. So he ended up smacking the phone out of this kid's hand, who later I learned was Talesian. I ended up getting in between him and Talesian, and at this point, we've now closed the distance, so now me and him are a few inches away from one another, and I don't know where Talesian is, but he's somewhere behind me. I ended up pushing him in the direction opposite of where Talesian was. He ended up getting in my face and being like, you want some of this too? And I was like, nope, just get off the train, and pushed him down the aisle. Not even sure if those are the exact words I said.
Okay.
Either way,
But
I
at the
ended
end
up
of the
pushing
day-
him down the aisle so that I could get him farther away from Talesian. He got up, unflicked a blade from behind his back, stabbed me in the throat, one behind me, and I didn't see it, but apparently stabbed Talesian and Ricky Best 5 times each. And they ended up dying pretty much instantly.
Yeah, that's basically what you were there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got you. So what do you think from that particular point on? What did you think about Jeremy?
Well, at first, I just assumed from what I had heard him say on that train that he was a white supremacist, probably somebody with neo-Nazi sort of tendencies, which is, in fact, different than white supremacy. Subtle, but it is different. And somebody that would be considered what you would call like an Odinist. So I thought that he had a very deep belief in, like, Viking gods, essentially, and that he had a lot of those tendencies.
Yeah. He looked like he needed help, and the reason why I'm bringing this stuff up again with you is that I sort of knew him too, because I was running for office. I was running for county commissioner at the time, and there was a deal where they had the Rose Festival was on 82nd.
Yeah.
It was that's when
My high school used to perform in that in the drumline. I actually have marched in that parade.
And I saw him because he was covering that. He had the American flag, and he was out there.
The Betsy Ross.
And and after he waved at me, I waved at him. From the standpoint, I had my Marine Corps gear on.
Right, absolutely.
You know my point?
Yeah.
And so he related to that, so to speak. And so I said hi to him. But the bottom line is that I recognized he looked like he needed a little help.
Well, and so that's what I mean. Initially, those are the thoughts I had about the man.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I don't know why. I guess it's just my nature. Given enough time and enough space and enough sobriety, I eventually started to look into who is this guy that stabbed me?
Right.
You know what I mean? I know that by default I'm probably supposed to hate this guy, and don't get me wrong, I kind of do. Kind of messed my life up pretty badly. But nonetheless, if I'm going to be angry at something, I should understand it first.
Yeah.
And so one of the first things I did was was reading every post he made on Facebook from the very first one all the way up to 2019 before the stabbing had occurred. And I also ended up trying to get in contact with his mother. That did not work out as well as I had thought. I'm still trying. Simply to have a conversation, not in any way to condone or condemn, but just simply to understand, learn more about him.
This is after the incident.
This is after the incident has occurred, right?
You're reaching out.
Right, I'm attempting to reach out. I never actually was able to get her on the phone.
But that's still you were still
absolutely.
reaching out.
Right, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
And what I learned was that Jeremy really didn't have a real opinion on anything. The man was insanely mentally ill.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even
He had a
use
problem.
a lot of problems.
Yeah.
And at every standpoint or junction in which somebody could have stopped him in this path that he was going down.
Right.
The systems that were put in place to be able to facilitate that failed.
Right.
So I don't know whatever school he went to or whether the problems were even manifesting at the time, but if they were, they failed him, right? His parents, doing the best they could, mind you, but were unable to provide him what was necessary in order to make him a more functional human being.
Right.
The social services that we have in place for people with such issues.
The county.
The county failed.
That's why I was running. That's why I was familiar with it. And
the police.
The man needs help. Yep.
The police themselves. Had been called to numerous different scenarios over a time span of years in which he was literally physically he had in fact stabbed somebody on 3rd and Ankeny about 3 years ago.
Yeah, they knew him.
They knew him, I think, even by name.
Yeah.
And they failed him, and therefore ostensibly what would be considered their acting commissioner, unfortunately that being Ted Wheeler, also failed him. Like so many different steps and layers in the system have failed him.
They didn't reach out.
And so at the end of the day, this juncture that we got to, not to say this is an excuse. The man must suffer for what he's done. But let's not act as if this guy was just an evil genius sitting here scheming and waiting. The system failed.
The system failed. I agree with that. And that you're right on that aspect of it. And in most cases, when you say system, is also leadership.
Absolutely.
The leadership aspect of it. We got probably the largest city here in the state of Oregon, i.e. Portland.
Right.
And then the county, right? You got,
Right, Multnomah.
Again, Multnomah County. It's the largest county
Right.
in the state aspect of it. And they're supposed to have those services. Primarily, the county is supposed to be responsible, if you will, the mental illness aspect of it as far as those services are concerned. But again, they're not reaching out and doing the job, you know what I mean? And then the respondents, that's the other thing about respondents. Sure, we have a law enforcement piece, we got the Portland police aspect of
Right.
it, but whether or not they should be the first respondent, or do they have the background, that's not what they do. They're law enforcement officers. You know what I
Right.
mean? And however, the county, on the other hand, they are the mental illness aspect of it.
Right. And as far as the mental illness aspect is concerned, it's not really what I'm worried about when it comes to the police force.
Yeah.
That I'm not going to blame them for that. Their
right.
job is not to be psychologists.
Right.
But when you're getting calls that have tall, large, white gentleman is attacking a bouncer at a strip club with a baseball bat,
right.
which is something Jeremy did, mind you. I happen to know that bouncer.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that you haven't arrested this man yet is
Yes.
amazing.
Yes,
It
yes.
speaks to a level of incompetence that is quite frankly unacceptable. I don't know what else to say.
Yes.
If I had a mentally ill, ranting lunatic
Yeah.
with a baseball
Yeah.
bat running through my neighborhood,
Right.
I had children,
Right.
I had called the police on this gentleman multiple times. Not to say that I'm necessarily the one to
Right.
do that,
Right.
but if I had, and over again, this man had gotten away, I'd have a problem.
Yeah, right,
a very
right,
serious
right,
problem.
right,
There'd be
right,
some
right,
people
right,
who would be getting phone calls.
Right. Well, it should be. But again, it's about that leadership aspect of it, too.
Right.
You know, it does flow.
Well, it does
It's
flow.
supposed
I mean,
to
right,
flow.
absolutely.
It's supposed to flow.
So you're a military man,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
At the end of the day, when one of the soldiers in a platoon fails,
Yeah.
it is inevitably the fault of the officer above him.
That's right.
And then the officer above that, and
Yeah,
et cetera, et
yeah,
cetera,
yeah,
et
that's
cetera, right?
That's right.
So at the end of the day, whether we like it or not, there's a number of different parties involved. Like it's not simply a matter of police failing; it's a matter of their sergeants failing, and then whatever is above that failing, and then at the end of the day, the commissioner himself for the police
Right,
department, which
right.
at this point, due to the way that Portland's set up,
He's the
would be
mayor.
Ted Wheeler,
Yep,
the
yep,
mayor,
yep.
failing.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And this brings up an interesting point because I didn't even know that we didn't have a police commissioner. That almost seems insane to me. Why would I want a governor to be in charge of the not a governor, I'm sorry, a mayor, which almost makes less sense. Why would I want a mayor to be in charge of my police force? What experience could he
With no
possibly
background.
have?
No, he didn't have any.
Right. There's no law
And
enforcement
then
background
he's
there.
wearing so many other hats, too.
Absolutely.
That's the other problem.
So there's almost this layer of I almost feel bad for the guy because how could he do a
Yeah,
good
he couldn't-
job?
yeah, he couldn't, no.
It's unfair to expect that.
Well, I've always made the point about it, because I've been around this business for quite
Right.
some time.
Yeah, I can tell, Bruce.
And, the OJT thing is, normally you go through an OJT, but I don't like the system of government from the standpoint that when you put out the application, if you will, to run for office,
Right.
I mean, the resume doesn't reflect that. You get
Yeah.
if you got the money in the pocket, you can buy the position.
Right.
Okay, and this on and on and on. Let's say that's the way it was. We need to get back to, i.e., making sure that the pre-qualification exists along that line.
Absolutely.
And then, like you just made the point about the fact he's trying to address himself from the standpoint that he's the police guy. He's the guy that deals with that issue, but really not. He does have a staff person.
Right.
Staff person.
Absolutely. And that's something that people
but
don't
you
think
never
about.
see the staff person.
Right. They don't
You
think
never
about
see the
that.
staff. There was one that was designated. I just happened to have interviewed him over here many times. His name was Baruti Atari, but the fact of the matter is that they got him on some kind of a charge, if you will, and they fired the guy.
Really?
Yeah. And they put someone else in there. It happened to be a young lady aspect of it. I knew of her then, but you never see her. You see, there's no communication there.
And so then
See what I'm saying?
it begs this question of how is there supposed to be any accountability if we don't even
Exactly.
understand who is controlling what?
Exactly.
And so like for instance, you had mentioned these rallies that have been happening.
Yes.
This is why you're seeing that,
Yes,
okay?
yes.
You have a citizenry that doesn't understand anything about its government
Yeah.
on a national level,
That's right,
on a
that's right,
local
that-
level,
that's right, that's
on a
right.
regional level.
That's right.
They have a million different issues
right,
that they are
that's right.
constantly dealing
That's
with on a
right,
day-to-day
that's right.
basis, and they have absolutely no idea how to handle them
That's
because they
right.
don't even know who to talk to
No,
in the
they
first
don't
place.
know who to talk to.
Who's in charge?
They don't know
What's
who to
their
talk
job?
to.
How does that job work?
They need to talk to. And I think about that too, because I've been on several of the rallies, downtown aspect of it, and just for myself. And I had my, I have a Marine Corps jacket that I wear
Right.
just to make sure that people know who I am.
Right,
And
understand.
then I got my logo, my brand.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I take advantage of the idea. People say, thanks for serving.
Absolutely.
You got me? And I've never been downtown or approached anybody where a person didn't say, thanks for serving first.
Okay.
You got me? Even the guys that might have the Antifa would have the mask on and whatever. I'd approach several of these young men and I say, hey, when do you want to leave? Just like we did there earlier. When do you want to leave? I mean, I'm looking.
When are we sending you over, kid?
I'm looking. Yeah, I'm looking for some Marines. You know what I'm saying?
What was that?
I can put them in a uniform overnight and train them.
You got arches in them feet? You're not flat-footed?
That's right.
All right, come on, let's go.
Let's go. See, and so then I found out then, that the idea is that hey, the leadership, they want something to do. You got me? And I'm just saying, the young man, as far as I'm concerned, he fits the criteria. If he's out there to get out there and do some banging, I want to know who he is.
Right.
Maybe erect a boxing ring or something, and let's do a protest, but let's have a good boxing match. Let's go down to the dog, whatever.
Well, no. And see, so here's something interesting, and I don't know.
Be creative about
right.
Stuff.
I don't know how you necessarily feel about this, but so Measure 11.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
This is a bill that, and actually it kind of reminds me of what your previous talker was talking about when it comes to the generality of the writing of a law.
Yeah.
Doing a Measure 11, you can get in a simple fist fight in a bar over a disagreement with somebody and end up with 11 years behind bars.
Yeah. You got a lot of guys right now who shouldn't be there.
Right.
They shouldn't have been there. I knew why the reaction. I remember that piece. You got my point?
Right. Absolutely. No. Yeah.
And I knew the representative that did it.
Right.
For his own greed.
So getting that in right. My what I'm trying to extrapolate from that is, if you look at the culture that we're seeing in Portland right now, this is what happens when you have a pent-up society that's not allowed to have problems with each other.
That's right.
Like disagreement, dissent, and the concept of arguing is almost downplayed and considered a problem in this town. Like nobody has an argument anymore.
Right.
I don't know if you've ever been to Minnesota. There's a terminology in Minnesota called Minnesota nice.
Okay.
Well, we have Portland polite.
Okay.
Right.
We
have Portland polite.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Because people just don't. Nobody. It's always about stay calm, smiles. How you doing? Oh, it's very nice to see you. And then the minute I turn around, I'm talking to my partner about how much of a garbage human being you are.
Yeah. Right.
Instead of us just having a conversation, communication, having an argumentation, and all of a sudden, even if I disagree with you, I at least respect you as a human being.
Exactly. Well, I tell you what, I got to have you back. But the other thing I wanted to share with the public out here is that, they've got this system that the city meets. Let's say the city and the county both. They meet. City council has a gathering, if you will. The public can go to the table.
The city hall.
And you got 3 minutes. By the time you look at what's going on, 3 is gone. You got to communicate, and that's what that leadership is all about. And then breaking right in the middle of the deal. If someone starts getting disrupting, well, we're going to take a break. Well, it's no break time. Let's just keep talking.
Right, let me put it this way. It's been what? Would you say 30, 40 minutes now?
Oh, easy.
30, 40 minutes.
Yeah,
we're still not done with the conversation.
No.
We're still not. It's been 40 minutes.
That's why I want to make that point.
And you want me to what in 3 minutes?
There's no way.
You want me to explain to you the complex process of what you're doing wrong in 3 minutes?
Right. So I'm giving them an example. And then the other day is that now they've changed the format a bit. And I'm really trying to help the guy out. I really am. I'm trying to help the mayor out a little bit. Because I'm trying to say at the same time, beforehand, unlike the county, first come, first serve.
Right.
You get up there and you just talk and you just keep going. But now at the city, it's just the opposite. You got to write down specifically what you're going to be talking about, and then they look at that piece and they try to commercialize.
Figure out how they can set up the order to be.
It don't work that way.
No.
You got my point. So I can talk. We got about 5 minutes, but my point is that we can talk about the solutions and solving the problem as we go. 'Cause I want you the next time around. Too.
Absolutely.
I want you next. But the point is that we want to talk before the summer is here. You got me?
Right.
We want to really communicate with the folks that are out there.
Right. So let's break it down.
Then we'll just break it down accordingly. You got my point? So I wanted you to start right off the bat.
Good.
And then I'm suggesting that the commissioners on both sides of this, the county and especially the city,
right.
To maybe look at what they're doing, and then when they get to the point they have some sort of an idea of what to do. I'd love to invite them to come on the show
Absolutely.
And you'd be a co-host with me.
I'd love to talk to them.
You see what I'm saying? Just rap with them about this whole business.
Right.
And if necessary, we might get a little panel going. You know, we might get you, Joy, and the young lady. I like the young lady because she's very outgoing. I mean, she really gets going. I think she's going to run for office. She said she's going to run for office.
You think so?
Oh, yeah, I think she's going to run for
Okay.
office. And in fact, I'm throwing it out to you, too. I'm saying, no, put something in the front of your name. I mean, put
You know, man, I tried the whole neighborhood association thing,
no,
and
but that's okay. But sometimes you got to do it over. I've been doing it quite some time. I've run for governor. I've run the whole 9 yards, and it's not. I'm not a fluke. The point of the matter is that you got something to say. You get more than 3 minutes.
that's true.
You put something in front of your mind.
That's
you
a very good point. Yeah.
And to me, you are a good example. You know, besides the fact you know, just to make sure you get at the front of the line, other than the name, you had to get stabbed in the neck. See, I called you up and I reached out to you. Said, how did this guy get what happened? And we talked a little bit about it. And you know, to me, I felt you're a very reasonable person. Got my point?
I hope so.
But you stood up for whatever was right. You get my point?
Well, yeah, I did the best with the information I had at the time to do what I've been taught is the right thing to do.
And the individuals on the other side hadn't been taken care of.
Right.
See,
and that's all that is.
Yeah, that's all that is. And so somebody need to react to that piece. It's the mental illness issue aspect of it. He should not have been on the street. But see, I go back a ways here in this town, and they used to have a mental institution where they did take. It was called Damage, up in the Beaverton area. Oh yeah,
never heard of it.
They had a facility, the whole 9 yards. Folks would go over there. But guess what? Developers came there and said they want the land.
Right.
You get the drift.
That's
just like they
right,
did.
'cause it's all about the money.
Just like Wapato. You've heard of the Wapato jail, so to speak.
Right.
It was not, but it's a facility. And then the public put about $100 million in it. And some developers came by, and this county gave it away for $5 million. See, and people look at it as other people's money, but it's my money. It's your money.
Absolutely.
It's other people's money. But so my point is that we've gotten down to the point that those entities, and I don't knock anybody from the standpoint of everybody got to eat.
Yeah. No, I
Everybody's
understand
got to
that.
eat. You got my point?
Yep.
But there are certain things you leave alone.
Absolutely.
You see what I'm saying? So the mental illness is a huge piece. So we got quite a bit to do. We got about 2 minutes left to do. And so what I would do after this piece, we're going to set something up again. Now we've met one another.
All right.
And we're going to talk about this. I got you, Joy, and I got her, so to speak.
Okay.
And then I want you to come back.
All right.
And we're going to talk about what do we do next. You got me?
Okay.
Because I got some ideas.
It sounds like a
But
great
I want to
idea.
share them with you in terms of what I think the process should be to be able to, for a person to articulate
Right.
an issue that will better our way of life.
Absolutely.
Better our way of life.
Absolutely.
Because I'm getting at that point in my life. I mean, I can deal with it myself. You know, I'm sitting up here at 80 years old, but I don't have any problems. You know, doing some other. See, I can do my thing.
Right.
But, I'm getting to the point that there are other seniors running around that would love to have a cup of coffee up in the Park Square aspect of it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Sit around and shoot the breeze. You know.
I'm all about the coffee, man. I'm all about the talk.
You know, feed the pigeons. You know. things
Right,
like
right.
that. But see, but now they're all afraid and whatever. You know, it's a beautiful city aspect of it. And then you know, like I said, then I may have to put my Marine Corps recruiting series on. And,
I mean, look, man.
and get you back up in there. See, I'm gonna have to get you there.
Look, you just make sure Quantico pushes through that medical waiver, and maybe we'll get it this time around.
Sounds
all
good.
right? I
Sounds
can't
good.
control Quantico.
Michael, it's a pleasure, really.
It's a pleasure, bro.
It's
Seriously.
really,
I
it's
really
gonna
have
be
enjoyed getting to talk to you.
No, hey, you got to come back on.
I love it.
In fact, it might be the point where you may have to do the interviews.
Like at
How
this,
about that?
no,
Would you like
no,
that?
I'm for it.
I know you will.
I would love to interview Joey Gibson.
Well, let's
I
do
would
it.
absolutely adore that.
Well, let's get it done.
Let's set it up.
We'll set it up.
All right.
Sounds good. Well, folks, you got it. I mean, I've been here with Michael. We've had Joy to come on. We've had what's the young lady's name? What's her name? I don't remember her name right off the bat. But
Oh, from today?
no, I had her.
Yeah. Before me, Clarissa.
No. This was the young lady that was at this one rally. She's a little thin blonde lady. And,
I don't know
very
anything
active.
about
that. But check out the deal. You can check it out on
Okay.
YouTube. Okay, good.
Look it up.
Well, look, we're winding it down right now, folks. This has been great. Michael has been great. I mean, I really appreciate this situation. Check out some of the old shows, by the way, on YouTube. You can just go to YouTube, Oregon Voters Digest, and you can take some of those shows and catch Michael again on the show, okay? Sounds good. And we're going to have him back on, and we're going to follow up on what he talked about. We're going to get the main characters, and we're going to sit around the table. There's not going to be no issue, because trust me, I can control my piece.
Oh, I believe it.
I will do it, my friend.
I don't have a
and
problem.
with you, I know I'll do it.
Yes, sir.
Okay, again, it's a pleasure. Okay,
Pleasure, Bruce.
Good. Okay, folks, you got it, and hope you really jump on this whole issue with reference to the immunization aspect of it. I think that's a very key piece, and make sure that you remind Portlanders about the lead issue. They still haven't done the job in Portland public schools. Remember that, okay? Good. Have a good evening. Enjoy the sun. Talk to you next week. We'll have a good one again. Take care.